Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist for Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and this week's Field Friday we're kind of looking at the wrath of Mother Nature again. We're out here looking at some of this corn after some heavy rain events we've had just recently go through the area. As you look at this corn, this smaller corn, you can see how it's down. It had very saturated soils, 5, 6, 7 inches, whatever we've had in these areas, and it's laid over without a lot of strong wind just because the soils are so saturated. If you look at this corn, this is just across the road, same area. This corn is bigger. You can see there's some of this is doing the same thing. It's catching this wind with saturated soils and no anchoring ability of these roots. But if we look at the consequences of what that's going to do, it really won't have any negative impact for the most part. This corn, again, we talked about it last week and we're seeing it again this week, just a week later in some of the corn development. This corn is still flexible enough. It'll stand back up and it won't really have any yield impact. Really shouldn't have any, anything complicated other than maybe it'll make it a little bit more difficult if it hasn't been sprayed yet. You may have some of that leaning across the rows and that goosenecking maybe making that row a little narrower to work with from a sprayer track perspective, but other than that, really no agronomic or yield impact very likely on this. The other thing I thought we'd talk about is with this heavy rain, there are some pockets that had some corn that was flooded underwater, beans flooded underwater. Just thought we'd talk about a couple of things that, what to look for, what things might be more or less damaging, how long that crop can survive underwater, and what types of things are important. Underwater, if the air temperature is less than 75 degrees, corn and soybeans probably can survive several days if they really had to. If the soil temperature is a little warmer, they may only last a 24-hour period or so. As they're a little bit warmer soil temperatures or a little bit warmer air temperatures, they're going to be respiring and using up that oxygen, that limited oxygen in that saturated soil, and they probably won't last as long. So the cooler weather slows the growth down temporarily, and that'll help it survive in an underwater condition. If that corn is partially underwater or totally underwater, obviously totally underwater is harder on it. Same thing with beans if they're totally underwater or only partially covered. How long is that soil going to be, with water on it and saturated? Obviously the shorter the better. You're going to deplete that oxygen level in that soil very quickly in saturated soils. So if it's not a normally low area that always gets wet, just because we had exceptional rain, if it goes away fairly quickly, that's going to be less of a factor. If it's a low depression that's always wet, obviously that's going to be a bigger deal. Is there mud or debris on the leaves or not? That's a factor. You're going to block off some of the photosynthesis in these leaves if there's a bunch of mud, debris, and so on those leaf surfaces, so that's a factor. Lighter soils, obviously that saturation level will go away quicker. Heavier clay soils, that's going to be a bigger problem. And then probably another factor, did that crop get pushed over and laid on the ground with the water flowing across it, or did it just come up and have corn that's standing or beans that are standing but not get pushed over? All those are factors that are going to have an impact on what's that area going to do as the season goes on, and is it going to make it? Here we are, we're looking at these saturated soils. Even if the weather goes with us and helps us, the earliest we'd be able to do anything is probably around the 1st of July. Replants are pretty minimal in their yield potential. Corn, not really an option. Beans, very little unless you want to try it. Sometimes we may just want to put something in so it's not all weeds. We maybe could even do that with some small grains or some, cover crop type stuff if we're just trying to keep some weeds from taking over a low area that drowned out and didn't survive. But some of those things, every situation, every scenario is different. Talk to your CFE field agronomist. If you have some questions, I'm sure we'll have lots of scenarios and lots of things we'll have to look at and see once what the impact and what the action steps might be. With that, that's our Field Friday segment for this week, and hopefully we'll have something less damaging to look at next week.